Hi, I'm Michele Bullock. I'm a licensed massage therapist in Washington State, and I bring you MBLEx resources. I've got videos here on YouTube and on my website, and in the link in the description below, you'll find resources such as courses and PDF download, ebooks, practice tests, study guides, all related to the MBLEx so that you can pass the Massage and Bodywork licensing exam with calm and confidence. Today we're going to be talking about, or I'm going to continue my Anatomy and Physiology series, talking about membranes. Yay, membranes! So we're going from tissues to membranes, and then we're going to go into the integumentary system in the next video. But in this video, we're going to be talking about how we go from the cell to the tissue to the membranes, why that's important. We're going to be talking about membrane types. We have connective tissue membranes, we have epithelial tissue membranes. We're going to go through all four membrane types. We're going to talk about their structure and function. We're going to be talking about what the heck membranes are and why they're not categorized under the umbrella of a specific system like the integumentary, muscular, nervous system, endocrine system, because they're a separate thing. They encapsulate the systems. So that's why we talk about it separately. So I'm going to be doing this in slideshow format, so I'll be just recording my screen and you won't see me for the rest of the video. Sorry. We'll go ahead and get started. Just make sure and get a hold of the PDF download of the slideshow so that you can follow along if you want to. And there's some questions at the very end of the video, MBLEx style questions, to help you dial in that information and give you practice in answering Massage and Bodywork licensing exam questions. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. See you over there. All right, let's get going talking about membranes. So the body's organized in these beautifully interconnected layers. Cells join together to form tissues, and tissues combine to form organs. And many of these organs and other structures that tissues are creating are enclosed and protected by membranes. These membranes line the cavities, separate internal spaces, and regulate the movement of substances throughout the body, maintaining the delicate balance that keeps us alive and healthy. So the reason that we're studying membranes now is because membranes cover all the other organ systems that we're going to be going through. And there are 4 different kinds of membranes. We're going to talk about each of those. But the last one that we're going to be talking about is the cutaneous membrane, which is the skin. So, and that's the next segment that we're going to be going into after that, is talking all about the integumentary system, which is the skin. So that's why we're starting with talking about we're talking about membranes in general. Just kind of throwing that in here real quick. It seems like kind of an aside, but they're an important part that they're not one specific organ system. They protect all the organ systems. So this is important for you to know as a massage therapist or body worker, because the cutaneous membrane, which is the skin, is both a protective barrier and it's a sensory interface. And it's where we are working the most. We're working on people's skin, where of course we're working on the structures underneath. But that's our interface between our skin and their skin, is where we are touching each other. And the quality of someone's overall health is going to be reflected in the skin. And so it's important for us to understand how these membranes work for that. So the role of membranes, as I've been saying, is to protect organs with a covering or lining, and to secrete some kind of fluid. All 4 different types of membranes have some kind of secretion, and that includes the cutaneous membrane. So there are 2 classifications for these 4 different kinds of membranes. There's 2 classifications. The first one being synovial, it's considered to be a connective tissue, even though its inside is an epithelial mucus creator. So all of these have epithelial characteristics and they create some kind of mucus. or some kind of fluid. And all of them have a basement membrane that's technically a connective tissue, but they are separated because the synovial membranes have more connective tissue. Okay, so the synovial membranes protect the joints and they produce synovial fluid. And I'm going to go into that more in depth in a minute. Serous membranes protect closed cavities. That's inside of our torso, inside of our thoracic region, inside of our abdominal and pelvic regions. We have closed cavities, and we have serous fluid to protect those organs inside. And then we have mucous membranes, which is in our nose and our respiratory system. And so we classify that as being protection of open cavities. Closed cavities for serous, mucus is open cavities, and it produces mucus. And then we have cutaneous, cutaneous membranes protect open cavities, and they produce sebum, which is like the oil glands, right? Stick an E in there. Thank you for your patience with me while I fix that. Okay, so synovial membranes being the first classification of membranes. Connective tissue, as I was saying, found in the synovial joints. Those are the movable joints that we have. So that would be the glenohumeral, which is the shoulder. We have the acetabular, which is the hip. The tibiofemoral, that's the knee. Talocrural is your ankle, etc. The elbow joint. And those are all synovial joints. They're all protected by a joint capsule, right? So this is a bone and this is a bone. Whoop, no. Sorry about that. So this is a bone and this is a bone. Here's the cushiony cartilage, right? Encapsulating everything is a connective tissue called joint capsules. This really fibrous thing, sock, I guess, holding everything together. Lining the inside of that would be the fibrous outside of the synovial membrane. That's the connective tissue part of the synovial membrane. On the inside of that membrane, that's the blue, the dark blue color. That would be the epithelial cells that create the synovial fluid. And that creates a squishy gel-like pocket to further lubricate and reduce friction in the joint. And it's also a place for nutrient and waste exchange for the cartilage, because the cartilage is a living thing, right? So nutrients and waste need to be coming and going out of that. Let's see, is there anything I've missed in all of that? I think that's about it. Okay, so that is synovial membranes. Serous membranes are in the closed cavities of our bodies. So that's inside of our abdomen, inside of our chest, thoracic, abdominal, pelvic, and also encapsulating the heart to keep it safe. It needs its own very special squishy pocket. So you see how there's a bubble around the organ, right? Let's pretend that's the heart. Okay, so you got a squishy bubble of serous membrane around it. So this black line would be the basement membrane, but it is a kind of connective tissue. And then the light blue lining would be the epithelial part that creates the serous fluid. And it's the same thing on the inner lining. But they're differentiated as the parietal layer being on the outside, and then there's the liquid pocket. And then on the inside, completely covering the organ, is called the visceral layer. And remember, whenever we talk about something that's visceral, it's talking about the organs. So remember that in the future. Visceral always means referring to organs. So yeah, the epithelial, that's my dog making some noises. The epithelial membrane creates the fluid for the serous pocket there. Let's see, provides lubrication, reduces friction with movement, and protects the organs. And here's a couple of images I took from my complete anatomy software that I have. I can't turn it around, but yeah, I just took a couple of pictures so I wouldn't have to mess around. So as you can see, this abdominal thoracic bubble is called the peritoneum, Peritonem, peritoneum right there. And you see there's like an outer bubble, an outer lining, and then there's an inner lining, right? And the stomach kind of has its own kind of bubble right there. You can see the shape of it. And then now that's all the pink. That pink is called the peritoneum. And then the green part is called the pleura, and it protects the lungs inside of a protective bubble. And then this solid green, that would be the heart. It's behind. This bone right here is the sternum. So it's protecting the heart underneath, and the heart has its own bubble, and that's called the pericardium. Peri means outside, cardium referring to the heart, and then on the abdominal thoracic serous membrane, we call that the peritoneum, outside tonium, I guess. That means the stuff that's in your belly. Okay, so next we're going to talk about mucous membranes. That's the third kind of membrane, and that is the place where your phlegm and your boogers are created. So lining the open cavities in your nose, sinuses, in your lungs, in your digestive tract, in your urinary, and in the vaginal tract of people that have vaginas. So it's made of a single layer of epithelial tissue. Now you remember we were talking about how epithelial tissue, I'm just going to go over here to the other, that's this one over here. So you see we got mucous membranes in here. Am I on the right one? Oopsie, that's tissues. Okay, yeah. So we have single layers of epithelial tissue. That's what most of our epithelial tissue that lines membranes looks like. It's only got the stratified layers for the cutaneous membrane. That's the skin. So simple, single-celled lining for the mucous membranes of our special places, and some of them have little hairs, and we call that cilia, especially in the respiratory tract, we call that cilia. So yeah, but thin basement membrane as well, which is a kind of connective tissue, and it warms and moisturizes air passageways. And in all other tracts, like in the digestive tract and the urinary and vaginal tracts, it's protecting the linings of those places from damage from the environment that they're in. For example, in the urinary tract, I'm just going to blow that up. In the urinary tract, we've got uric acid that can cause damage. We have digestive acids that can cause damage. And the vagina has an acidic environment, so it could cause damage. So that's why we have mucous membranes there, is to protect those places. And then finally we have cutaneous membranes. That is the whole outer covering of our bodies. That's the skin, okay? So they are stratified, and we're going to go more into that when we talk about the integumentary system in the next video. But stratified layers of epithelial cells. And inside of every hair follicle, there are these little glands that produce a fluid called sebum, which is like a waxy kind of oil that moisturizes and protects the keratinous outer layers of our skin, because keratin can get really dry and hard. And so that fluid that comes up through the glands helps to protect those layers from being too dry and scratchy and introducing any kind of microbes to the environment. Okay, so We're done with that information already, and we're going to be doing some MBLEx style questions. So let's go ahead and get started. Which of the following statements best describes the function of a synovial membrane? So we're going to look at the question here for a second and find out exactly what we need to know. A statement that best describes. So we have to find the best description. Okay? So it doesn't have to be precise. It's just the best one out of the choices that we have. What makes sense the most to you? Whoop. Okay. I already showed you the answer. Sorry about that. A, it lines body cavities that open to the exterior, such as digestive or respiratory tracts. It lines body cavities that open to the exterior, synovial membrane. Open to the exterior, such as, so which membrane is open to the exterior, right? Like the digestive or respiratory tract. So we just talked about this. That would be mucous membranes. So it can't be that one. B, it covers organs within the thoracic and abdominal cavities and secretes a watery lubricant called serous fluid. That would be serous membranes. C, it lines the joint capsules of freely movable joints and secretes a lubricating fluid that reduces friction between articulating surfaces. So we're talking about joints here. So that would be a synovial membrane, okay? And then the last one is it forms the outer covering of the body, protecting against pathogens, UV radiation, and dehydration. That would be our cutaneous membrane, that's our skin. Okay, so there's our answer here. Now remember that you can download the PDF of all of these slideshows so you can look at these questions and answers a little bit more in depth if you'd like to. Which of the following correctly describes a mucous membrane? All right, so we're looking at a correct description of a mucous membrane. A, it lines body cavities that open to the outside and secretes mucus to keep tissues moist and trap pathogens. Well, I'm already cool with that one. Let's see if there's a better correct description. B, it lines joint capsules and produces a fluid that reduces friction. That would be synovial joints. I have a little tickle in my throat. The cilia on my mucous membrane in my throat. C, it covers organs in closed cavities and secretes serous fluid to reduce friction. Closed cavities would be serous membrane, and it forms the outer waterproof covering of the body. That would be the cutaneous membrane. Okay, so A, mucous membranes. Okay, next question. A client is recovering from abdominal surgery, and the therapist explains that gentle movement can help prevent adhesions between the layers of the serous membrane. Which statement best describes the structure and function of this membrane? So if you get a question like this when you're in your MBLEx exam, all of this stuff at the top is just fluff. This is the part that we're looking for, okay? It's really important to pick apart what information is important and what information is not that you're given in the question. Serous membrane, right there. Which statement best describes the structure and function of the serous membrane? What do we know about the serous membrane? It lines the closed cavities of our body and protects our organs, our heart, and our lungs. So, A, produces mucus. No, it makes serous fluid, so that's not right. B, it forms a waterproof outer barrier. No, that would be the cutaneous, the skin. C, it lines closed body cavities and secretes a thin watery fluid to reduce friction between moving organs. That would be the serous membrane. And then D, it surrounds synovial joints and secretes the lubricating fluid. Ta-da! So C, serous membranes. Line internal body cavities like the pleura, pericardium, and peritoneum, secreting serous fluid to reduce friction between organs. Last one. Which of the following best describes the cutaneous membrane? A, it lines the digestive and respiratory tracts, keeping tissues moist. That would be the mucous membranes. B, it covers the entire body surface, forming the skin that protects, senses, and regulates temperature. Those are the functions of the cutaneous membrane, also the functions of the integumentary system. C, it lines joint cavities. That's the synovial membranes. And D, it secretes serous fluid to prevent friction between abdominal organs. Do we have this dialed in yet? That is serous membranes. Do we have all 4 of these membranes memorized now? It's going to be no problem at all. You'll have it memorized forever. Make sure and get the download of this and all the other slideshows that I've created so far in the Anatomy and Physiology series. Hang tight. Make sure and subscribe so you'll be in the loop when I create and post more of these videos. The next one is going to be on kicking off the integumentary system, its structure and function. And I will see you in that next video. Toodaloo.